At 8:47 p.m., over the Potomac River, two aircraft were seconds away from crossing paths. One was a regional jet, almost home, lined up for landing at Reagan National Airport. The other was a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter, flying a night training mission over Washington, D.C. Both crews were trained. Both aircraft were in controlled airspace. Both were operating inside a system designed to keep them separated. But that night, the system didn't hold. And in the final seconds, one radio call came too late. A few seconds later, the CRJ's collision warning system spoke.
Traffic.
Then impact. No time to recover. No second chance. 67 people lost their lives. This is the story of PSA Airlines Flight 5342 and Army helicopter PAT-25, based on the NTSB investigation and the ATC audio from that night. The flight began in Wichita, Kansas, at Wichita Dwight D. Eisenhower National Airport. The aircraft was a CRJ 700, registration November 709 Papa Sierra, operating as PSA Airlines Flight 5342 for American Eagle. For the passengers, this was not supposed to be a remarkable flight. Some were heading to Washington for work. Some were going home. Some probably had people waiting for them at Reagan National. Inside the cabin, everything felt normal. Passengers walked down the jet bridge, found their seats, placed bags overhead, and settled in. For a regional jet, the CRJ 700 is familiar. 2 seats on one side, 2 seats on the other. A smaller cabin than a mainline jet, but still routine for thousands of flights across the United States. In the cockpit, the crew was preparing for the flight to Washington. The captain was the pilot flying that wing. That means he would physically fly the airplane for the approach and landing, while the first officer would monitor, handle radios, and support the operation. The inbound crew and ground staff later described nothing unusual about the aircraft or the accident crew. The airplane was in good condition with no deferred MEL items. In plain English, an MEL item is something broken that an aircraft is still legally allowed to fly with under approved limits. For this flight, the report says there were no deferred MEL items. The crew appeared normal, ready to work. Nothing about the beginning of this flight gave any warning of what would happen later. At 5:22 p.m. Central Time, Flight 5342 left the gate. 17 minutes later, at 5:39 p.m., the CRJ departed Wichita from runway 19 right. For now, everything was routine. The CRJ taxied out in the evening light. From the outside, nothing would stand out. Navigation lights on. Taxi light ahead. Engines running normally. The crew lined up on runway 19 right. The thrust levers came forward. The engines spooled up. The aircraft accelerated down the runway. Airspeed alive. Rotate. Positive rate. Gear up. The CRJ climbed away from Wichita, heading east toward Washington, D.C. This part matters because it shows how ordinary the beginning was. No emergency, no mechanical failure, no sign that the airplane was in trouble. The danger that night was not inside the CRJ at departure. It would come much later, near the end of the flight, in some of the most complex airspace in the country. At cruise altitude, the flight settled into the quiet rhythm of airline flying. The autopilot would be managing the airplane. The pilots would be monitoring fuel, weather, systems, and arrival planning. Passengers may have been resting, watching something on their phones, or looking out into the darkness. A regional flight like this can feel simple to passengers. Take off, climb, cruise, descend, land. But from the cockpit, the arrival into Reagan National requires attention. DCA is not just another airport. It sits beside the Potomac River, surrounded by restricted airspace, government buildings, helicopter routes, and a high amount of airline traffic squeezed into a small area. Arriving aircraft do not have unlimited room to maneuver. They fly specific paths. They avoid certain areas. They follow tight procedures. And on this night, Flight 5342 would be cleared for one approach, then asked to take a different runway. That runway change would become one of the key moments in the timeline. While the CRJ was heading east from Wichita, another aircraft had already started its own mission. A U.S. Army UH-60L Blackhawk, call sign PAT-25, departed from Davison Army Airfield at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. This was not a rescue mission, not a combat mission, not an emergency. It was a training flight. More specifically, the NTSB report says one of the pilots was conducting an annual check ride using night vision goggles. In Army terms, that evaluation is called an APART, Annual Proficiency and Readiness Test. It's basically a required check to make sure the pilot remains qualified and proficient. There were 3 crew members on board the helicopter: an instructor pilot, a pilot being evaluated, and a crew chief. The instructor pilot was also the pilot in command, meaning he was ultimately responsible for the flight. The pilot being evaluated sat in the left seat. The instructor sat in the right seat. The crew chief was in the back. The mission had been planned earlier that day. The risk assessment was rated low. The helicopter was scheduled to fly in the evening and return later that night. The report also says the crew signed out night vision goggles, including white phosphor and green phosphor sets. That detail matters, because night vision goggles help pilots see in darkness, but they also have limitations. They narrow your field of view. They can affect depth perception. They can make it harder to judge distance, especially when you are looking at lights against a bright city background. So yes, NVGs help you see, but they do not make night flying easy. And they do not remove the need for altitude discipline, traffic awareness, and clear communication. That runway change would become one of the key moments in the timeline. To understand this crash, you have to understand the airspace. Reagan National Airport is squeezed into a very tight area. The Potomac River runs beside the airport. Restricted airspace surrounds Washington, D.C. Airline traffic is arriving and departing. Helicopters also operate along charted routes near the river. The NTSB described DCA as a complex ATC environment with special flight rules, a flight-restricted zone, prohibited areas, and extensive helicopter routes. That means controllers at DCA are not just watching one simple stream of airplanes. They are managing airliners landing, airliners departing, helicopters transitioning, military flights, police and medical flights, and all of this happens in a tight space. One of those helicopter routes is Route 4. The NTSB later found that Route 4 created a conflict with the approach path to runway 33 and departure path from runway 15. That is important because Flight 5342 was not originally set up for runway 33. It was cleared for the Mount Vernon visual to runway 1. Then Tower asked if they could take runway 33. As Flight 5342 approached Washington, Potomac Approach cleared the crew for the Mount Vernon visual runway 1 procedure. A visual approach means the pilots are using outside visual references to continue toward the airport while still operating under ATC control. The Mount Vernon visual is a common DCA arrival. It follows the Potomac River and keeps aircraft away from restricted airspace. For passengers, it can be beautiful. For pilots, it requires attention. You are close to the city. You are close to the river. You are close to restricted airspace. And at night, everything becomes more demanding. The CRJ continued toward Reagan National. The crew checked in with DCA Tower. At this point, they expected runway 1. Then, Tower asked a question.
Pushing 5342, Washington Tower, 1 star, 3217, Scott 25, you take runway 33.
This is an important moment. The wind was from about 320 degrees, gusting to 25 knots. runway 33 points roughly northwest, so it was more aligned with that wind than runway 1. But switching to runway 33 also changed the flight path. It meant the CRJ would circle from the runway 1 approach toward runway 33. In plain English, circle to land means you are not flying a long straight line to the runway. You are visually maneuvering near the airport to line up with another runway. That adds workload. You have to manage altitude, speed, flaps, landing checklist, outside references, runway alignment, and traffic awareness. After about 22 seconds, the crew accepted.
Yeah, we can do 33 for Blue 6342.
Tower cleared them.
For 6342, that's Wilson Bridge, change to start runway 33, runway 33, clear to land.
Change to runway 33, runway 33 for land with 6342.
The captain disconnected the autopilot at 8:45:25 p.m. to begin the circling maneuver. From this moment, the CRJ was hand-flown. The pilots were now visually maneuvering the aircraft toward runway 33 at night, close to the Potomac River. At the same time, Pat 25 was moving through the Washington helicopter route structure. The helicopter had left Davison earlier, flown a training route, landed at different points, and later departed back south toward the DC area. At 8:32 p.m., the crew checked in with DCA Tower and requested to proceed to Davison via Cabin John, helicopter route 1, and then transition to route 4. The controller gave the altimeter setting, and the crew read it back correctly. The helicopter reached Cabin John at about 8:38 p.m. It crossed Chain Bridge at 8:42. It crossed Key Bridge at 8:44. After Key Bridge, the published altitude dropped. The helicopter checked in with DCA Tower at 8:45:14, saying Pat 25 Memorial before passing Arlington Memorial Bridge. After that point, the route altitude was at or below 200 feet MSL. MSL means mean sea level. That is altitude above sea level, not above the ground. This matters because the Potomac River is near sea level, so 200 feet MSL is very low. Low altitude. Night. City lights. A helicopter crew using NVGs. A CRJ circling toward runway 33, and a controller managing both fixed wing and helicopter traffic. Now the two stories are beginning to merge. At about 8:46 p.m., DCA Tower called Pat 25.
Pat 25, traffic just off the Wilson Bridge to CRJ is 1,200 feet, start runway 33.
This is a traffic advisory. A traffic advisory is basically ATC telling one aircraft about another aircraft nearby. It gives the crew a mental picture, where the traffic is, what type it is, what altitude, what it is doing. Here, Tower told the helicopter that the traffic was a CRJ at 1,200 feet, circling runway 33. The Black Hawk replies, then Tower approved it. This phrase is one of the most important in the entire story. Visual separation means the pilot says, I see the other aircraft, and then takes responsibility for staying away from it. It can reduce controller workload. It can keep traffic moving. And in good conditions, it is a normal ATC tool. But it has a weakness. It depends on human eyes. And human eyes can be wrong, especially at night, especially with city lights, especially with aircraft lights moving against a bright background, especially when the aircraft you think you see might not be the one that matters. From the helicopter, identifying a CRJ at night is not like seeing a big airplane in daylight. You may see lights, landing lights, navigation lights, strobes, but you don't always see shape, distance, or closure clearly. Depth perception is reduced at night. NVGs can help with darkness, but they narrow the field of view and can make distance judgment harder. The NTSB visibility work specifically looked at night conditions, cultural lighting, and NVGs. Cultural lighting means all the lights from the city: roads, bridges, buildings, cars, airport lights. Those lights can make it harder to pick out aircraft and judge motion. Now imagine this from the cockpit of a helicopter. You are low over the river. You are following a route. You have a workload inside the cockpit. You are using NVGs. You hear ATC call traffic. You look outside and see aircraft lights. You report traffic in sight. But now your job is not just to see it. Your job is to stay safely away from it. That requires knowing exactly which aircraft it is, where it is going, how fast it is closing, and whether your flight path will pass in front or behind. And the clock is running. And human eyes can be wrong, especially at night, especially with city lights, especially with aircraft lights moving against a bright background, especially when the aircraft you think you see might not be the one that matters. The NTSB later said the DCA system relied heavily on visual separation for helicopter and fixed-wing traffic when weather allowed. That night, visual separation became the final safety layer. The controller was working in a busy environment. The NTSB ATC communication table shows that in the 21 minutes before the collision, the local controller communicated with 27 airplanes and 6 helicopters. That matters because this was not one controller talking to one airplane and one helicopter in a quiet sky. There was constant traffic, departures, arrivals, helicopters, runway changes, clearances, traffic advisories. And according to the NTSB, the local and helicopter control positions had been combined for more than 5 hours before the accident. On the day of the accident, the helicopter position was decombined for less than 1.5 hours total. In plain English, the same controller environment was handling jobs that could have been split. That increases workload, and when workload rises, attention becomes harder to manage. This does not mean one person simply failed. It means the system was operating with less margin. Back in the CRJ cockpit, the crew was now flying the circle to runway 33. The captain had disconnected the autopilot. The runway was in sight. The airplane was low, configured, and close to landing. This is a high workload phase of flight. Even when everything is normal, the final minutes of landing are demanding. The pilots are monitoring airspeed, altitude, sync rate, runway alignment, wind, configuration, checklist completion, and now they are circling at night into Reagan National. From the passenger cabin, none of this would feel dramatic. Maybe a turn, maybe city lights outside, maybe the runway coming into view. People may have been preparing to land, some looking out the window, some waiting for the wheels to touch. They had no way to know a helicopter was crossing their path. At 8:47:39, just 15 seconds before the collision, Tower asked Pat 25.
Pat 25, get the CRJ in sight.
3 seconds later, at 8:47:42, Tower transmitted.
Pat 25, pass behind the CRJ.
That instruction was clear. Pass behind. Let the jet go first. Do not cross in front of it. But the helicopter CVR showed that the phrase, pass behind, was stepped on by a 0.8 second microphone key press from the helicopter crew. In radio communication, stepped on means 2 transmissions overlap. If 2 people transmit at the same time, one can block or cover the other. So the words may be sent, but not clearly received. This is one of those tiny details that becomes huge. The controller said the right words, but the message may not have landed cleanly in the cockpit. At 8:47:44, Pat 25 replied,
It's about the aircraft inside precision separation.
Good separation.
The controller approved the request. Inside the helicopter, according to the CVR summary, the crew discussed their location and what the controller wanted them to do. They decided to fly closer to the east side of the river. Seconds remained. In the CRJ, the airplane's collision avoidance system was also part of the story. TCAS stands for Traffic Alert and Collision Avoidance System. Its job is to warn pilots about nearby aircraft. But TCAS has limits near the ground. Below certain altitudes, it may not give the same kind of resolution advisory because an aggressive maneuver close to the runway could be dangerous. The NTSB listed limitations of traffic awareness and collision alerting systems on both aircraft as contributing factors. The CRJ received a traffic alert.
Traffic.
That is not a command to climb or descend. It is a warning. Look for traffic. But this was extremely late. The airplane was close to landing. The helicopter was close. And according to the airplane FDR, about 1 to 2 seconds before collision, the captain made a near full aft control column input. In plain English, he pulled back hard. That may have been an instinctive attempt to avoid what he saw in the final instant. But by then, there was almost no time left. At 8:47:59 p.m., while the CRJ was in the circling maneuver to runway 33, it collided with the UH-60L Blackhawk over the Potomac River. The NTSB says the collision occurred about half a mile southeast of Reagan National Airport, and both aircraft impacted the Potomac River. The helicopter's main rotor contacted the underside of the CRJ's left wing. The outboard section of the airplane's left wing separated in flight. Both aircraft rapidly descended and struck the water. There was no recovery. No emergency landing, no mayday from the CRJ. No time. After impact, the radio changed. This is where the ATC audio becomes chilling.
Did you see that?
Then,
Crash. This is alert 3. Crash. This is alert 3. Crash. This is alert 3.
on board the CRJ were 64 people. 2 pilots, 2 flight attendants, 60 passengers. On board the helicopter were 3 Army crew members. All 67 were killed. Numbers can make it sound distant, but every number was a person. Someone who packed a bag, someone who texted a loved one, someone who expected to arrive. The CRJ crew had started their duty day in Wichita. The helicopter crew had planned a training mission that was supposed to end with an after-action review. Nobody boarded either aircraft expecting that their flight paths would meet over the river. The NTSB did not reduce this accident to one simple mistake. Their probable cause pointed to the FAA's placement of a helicopter route too close to a runway approach path, failure to regularly review and evaluate those routes, and failure to act on recommendations to reduce mid-air collision risk near DCA. They also cited the air traffic system's over-reliance on visual separation. They also found the helicopter crew did not effectively apply pilot-applied visual separation. Additional causal factors included the tower team's loss of situation awareness and degraded performance under high workload from combined helicopter and local control positions. The Army was also cited for not ensuring pilots understood error tolerances in barometric altimeters, which contributed to the helicopter flying above the maximum published route altitude. This matters because it shows the accident was not one bad call. It was layers. Route design, workload, visual separation, altitude, communication, alerting limitations. Each layer by itself might be manageable. Together, they created a situation with almost no margin left. At the beginning of the night, Flight 5342 was just another regional flight from Wichita. Pat 25 was just another Army training mission from Davison. One crew was preparing to land, the other was navigating a familiar route. Both were operating inside a system that was supposed to protect them. But the final safety layer became human vision at night. And when that layer failed, there was no time left. 67 people were gone in seconds. And the lesson from this accident is not simply that someone should have looked harder. It is that aviation safety cannot depend on perfect human perception in a crowded, complex, high workload environment. Because humans are not perfect. That is why systems must be built with enough margin to protect them when they are not. If this story stayed with you, let me know in the comments. What do you think was the weakest layer that night? The route design, the workload, the visual separation, or the communication? Subscribe for more aviation stories based on official findings. Take care and soft landings.